So maybe when we talk about the evolution of intelligent life, we have to look at it from an agnostic perspective, because if the evolution of intelligent life is intrinsically linked to the evolution of terrestrial planets, that still introduces a bias, right? So how do we approach the water world evolution versus something like the terrestrial world like Mars or Earth?
Yeah, because
and how to approach agnostically, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because like the more and more we study prebiotic chemistry, the more and more like things like hot, cold, wet, dry, acidic, alkaline cycles are elucidated. And I think that really does point to a terrestrial origin of life, like in a hot or warm little pond versus a deep sea vent. Now, like a lot of people tend to point to like deep sea vents because that's where like a lot of the molecular data converges. But we have to remember is that that's where the last universal common ancestor of everything alive today lived. That wasn't where it began. And like a few 100 million years probably passed between the origin of life and the last common ancestor.
That's a good point. I think people are probably enchanted by that deep sea vent idea too, right? Seems like Europa and Enceladus are the leading contenders for extraterrestrial life in the solar system, right? We've come up empty-handed on Mars, as far as I know, thus far. And people yearn for that, like we discussed earlier.
Yeah, because like I honestly think Mars would have been more conducive to the origin of life, but I think like Europa would be way more conducive to its continued evolution. So if something got there, I could see how it could have survived and propagated and possibly even evolved multicellularity, because the ionosphere of Jupiter causes like water to split in Europa's ice crust. The hydrogen flies off into space, the oxygen goes into the ocean, and that could sustain multicellular life, intelligent life possibly.
Wow, so you think there might be intelligent life on Europa?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, okay, I wouldn't be flabbergasted. I'd be like a giddy little schoolgirl. I'd be so excited, but
yeah,
like I would not just be shocked. Like it wouldn't be something I could never have seen coming.
It would be wild if there was some sort of intelligence in Europa that had the same level of cognition of at least human, right? But God knows how they evolve. But it'd be something that lived and evolved its entire existence for almost 4.5 billion years. Perhaps no concept of an outside universe. Their whole universe is capped by a 50-kilometer sheet of ice, right? Can't imagine what they think they saw us. What the heck is that?
It's gonna be a lift getting to them if they're down there, man. That's from an engineering perspective.
Wouldn't you just like put like a nuclear reactor in the front of a probe and then just have it melt its way down?
Well, you'll need to talk to planetary protection about that one. I mean, I mean, what if we can make the water? It just becomes, especially when planetary protection gets involved in the conversation, becomes this incredibly complex issue. And then you're strapping nuclear material onto a rocket.
Oh yeah.
And at least as of right now, NASA. So I mean, that they say that we're going forward with nuclear thermal propulsion. We'll see. They're pretty darn twitchy after both of those shuttle accidents.
Oh yeah.
They have been ever since. Especially because there was a cover up. It was essentially at least Challenger happened because there was a schedule push. Engineers were speaking up. They said there was a concern, and but essentially get bent. We have a schedule to keep, and people died. So that the culture, I mean, it's just been a total overreaction to that. So as long as they're still the premium agency and there's not a sea change in their risk-averse culture.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, wasn't there like
it's gonna be a tough one.
Wasn't there like also like a probe lost because somebody forgot to switch the units on Mars?
Oh yes, that's right.
The collaboration, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh God.
Climate observer. It was a climate observer. It wasn't decelerating. It slammed right. Sorry. I mean, I support planetary exploration, but whoa.
Yeah, we did a great job there. Well,
they forgot
probably sterilized. The impact probably.
Yeah, They forgot to convert like English to metric or something like that, you know?
Oh wait, Mitch, I was wondering though, like in engineering, do you guys use like metric or imperial units?
It's mostly metric anymore. It depends, man. Because I prefer to work in metric units because everything's base 10, right? You don't have to worry about pounds force versus pounds mass, of course. But there are certain subfields, especially within aerospace. Like if you're doing propulsion, especially turbo propulsion for like jets, we have so much knowledge because this was one of the centers of jet propulsion development in the world. There's so many resources that are written in those imperial units that people have just kind of they've cut their losses, and we continue to use those because we still have to access all Fortran codes. You don't have to think about converting units, and people, it's just like think about the infrastructure investment it would be to change all of our road signs from imperial units to metric units, right? People just don't want to take the leap, especially in propulsion.
Yeah.
Now, in human spaceflight, it's a metric you see a lot more, except that we're still stateside, and if you want to get a part machined, oftentimes you have machinists that are upset with you if you want to work in metric units because the whole machine shop is tuned for inches, right? Thousands of inches for small parts. They want it in thou, right, for tolerances.
Yeah.
So it becomes a burden to like you did design it in metric, but good luck machining it in metric often.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like in science, we're kind of like more so in our own little bubble, shall you say? So, because I remember like in 5th grade science class, it was everything was metric.
Sure.
But like I guess we don't have to like deal with actually like making stuff that people are going to be using on a regular basis in the United States.
I think so. There was a time I was working turbo propulsion in industry, and I got comfortable enough with the imperial units that I was working using those. But most of the time, I just do all my calculations in metric and convert.
Yeah. Oh, but like going back to the UFO thing, like let's just say the roles were reversed and say it's the year 24 something, and we're sent on a mission to explore a nearby star system where we think like it's habitable based on like atmospheric readings. Then when we get there, we find like a civilization where we were like either in the 1950s or possibly in the 2020s. Like, how should we react if that's what we see when we get there?
Probes.
Let's say not a probe. Sorry, let's say like we were like a bunch of people who are astronauts like frozen in cryostasis, woken up, and they find a civilization.
Like what level of advancement?
Like let's just say scenario 1, it's where we're at, like say in the 1950s. Scenario 2, 2020s.
So we're ahead of them.
Yeah. So they're where we were in the 1950s.
Right. Jimmy thinks we're going to ask about that. That's it.
Well, right in the 50s, before we crowded our planet's orbit and before our nuclear capacity increased, I think we'd be less likely to perceive a hostile threat. But 2020s, I mean, just look at our planet now. I mean, imagine if we flew to a planet that mirrored our own, which was in a persistent state of war and famine and droughts. And, I mean, what would you think? If it was me driving that space module, I'd be very wary of landing.
Yeah, so maybe that's why they're like going to like. Well, okay, I'm not saying I believe it, but I'm saying that I guess like why like that could explain why UFOs are seen often in remote areas. like in the middle of nowhere. Like, would you want to contact these guys' leaders? They could just perceive you as like a threat, and then from like a hostile nation, and then just blow you up.
There's a lot of shotguns in nowhere. I've been out in nowhere. There's a lot of shotguns out there. But but the thing is that again, I think it returns back to the idea of sort of like social anxieties and what do we experience, right, when the cultures meet. But in terms of the concept of aliens visiting Earth, I think that there's still, unfortunately, especially in academic circles, where tenure is an issue and where reputation is an issue, it suffers from the Google factor where people don't want to have open discussion inside of academia, inside of universities. And what I find really curious about it, Mitch and I were talking about this once, is that what strikes me really oddly about the whole UAP thing is sort of a rebranding of UFOs, I think, to avoid the Google factor by giving it a new acronym. But why is it that the military is openly discussing UAPs where in academia, you never hear about it, right? Or it's just now massive, like, oh, we put together a board and it's not unclassified material, blah, 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 blah. Because the social zeitgeist is like, okay, well, let's know about UAPs, but the majority of people don't care, right? They want to keep up with Kardashians and not know what's really occurring underneath that rock on the other side of the hill.
Yeah, but like, why is it like in the past year or so that this has become such a big thing?